Da Kristin Clemet innførte nasjonale prøver i 2004, tok Norge i bruk en kontroversiell metode for kvalitetssikring i skolen. Lærere forteller at resultatjag kan overstyre god undervisning. Foreldre forteller om en ny prestasjonsangst som rammer enkeltelever. Da eksperimentet kom til Norge, hadde England og USA allerede gjort sine erfaringer. Her skal vi møte to ledende eksperter som advarer mot standardisert testing i grunnskolen.
I was very involved on the conservative side of the fence. I had been deeply involved in 3 different conservative think tanks.
Som vice-utdanningsminister under den første president Bush ble professor Diane Ravitch stadig mer overbevist om at testing og resultatmåling skulle sikre kvalitet i skolen. Og da hele USA ble pålagt prestasjonstesting av ungene, var Ravitch med i den akademiske heiagjengen.
So all during the 1990s, there was quite a lot of talk about accountability, but it was only when President George W. Bush was elected in the year 2000 that he brought with him the concept that we should have a test given to every public school student from grades 3 through 8, and that every year students would be tested, and that this, if we did this, he said, there would be some miraculous transformation. And I believed, along with my colleagues, that testing and accountability would lead to improvement.
Gjennom 1990-tallet ble Ravitch overbevist av ideer om skolekvalitet som kom fra næringslivet. Det var en sterk trend som hun kaller den forretningsorienterte reformbevegelsen.
The corporate reform narrative begins with the assumption that public schools are failing, and it looks to international test scores and says we're only in the middle and we should be at the top, or we used to be at the top, which is actually not true. And so public schools are failing because we're not getting the performance that we expect. And then they say we're spending too much on schools, and so much of it is going to teachers, and so they hold teachers accountable. So their argument is that if teachers are held accountable, that is rewarded or punished, then their skills and abilities as teachers will somehow improve, and that will lead to higher test scores.
Professor Robin Alexander ved Cambridge har ledet den mest omfattende granskingen av Englands grunnskoler på 40 år.
England was ahead of the game, if you can call it a game, in introducing test-based accountability.
Forskerne dokumenterer nær enstemmig motstand mot nasjonale prøver blant Englands lærere.
Maybe politicians want a quick fix. If your country is sliding in the international league tables, PISA or TIMSS, you want to do something about it, you want to be seen to be doing something about it. If you simply say we need to work on the quality of teaching in the classroom, which is what we know will really make the difference, that looks like a very soft response. What do? You go for tests, you go for accountability, you go for a standards drive. Because then you go back to the electorate at the next election and say, standards were falling under the previous government, but look, we fixed it. We're going to test, we're going for high accountability, and that'll make a difference. The fact that it doesn't deliver the results is a problem for the next government.
I England har 20 år med offentliggjøring av resultatene fra nasjonale prøver forandret grunnskolens kultur, ifølge forskerne ved Cambridge.
So there's growing anxiety among teachers, parents, and children themselves, but particularly in schools, because schools are being judged on the basis of the results they achieve. What has happened in many schools is that the curriculum has narrowed to concentrate mainly on what is tested and what teachers know will be tested.
Ifølge forskerne har testregimet ført til innsnevret undervisning. Mange amerikanske skoler kutter kraftig ned på det som ikke testes, sånn som historie og naturfag. Lærerne må bruke mer og mer av tida si på testforberedelser.
It used to be considered a very bad thing to teach the test, that only very small-minded teachers would take last year's test and the test of the last 5 years and then teach exactly the same thing to the students. Now it's a common practice. Now there are firms and there are consultants that actually teach teachers how to, as they say, drill down into the test, to understand what they've been testing over the last 5 years. And so they teach children test-taking skills and test-taking tricks, and they teach them the format of the questions. And so we see very often that students learn how to take tests. Sometimes they even get good scores on the test, but they're not prepared for the next level of education.
What is driving teachers who teach to the test, or narrow the curriculum in response to the test, or panic unduly about the test, is probably the fact that the results are going to be published. And local newspapers pick them up, and estate agents pick them up, and it actually affects house prices. It's begun to affect house prices.
De utenlandske systemene er ikke identiske med de norske, men et viktig fellestrekk er at politikerne lager en konkurransesituasjon der jaget etter resultatmål skaper et ubehagelig press på rektorer og lærere, som også kan ramme elevene.
There's evidence of considerable stress on teachers, some evidence on stress on pupils. There's evidence from the international achievement surveys that English children have gained in the standards of reading, but this has been at the expense of their capacity to enjoy reading, and surely we want children to enjoy reading.
I hear from many teachers about the very negative effects of the testing obsession on students, particularly students who have disabilities. Teachers have told me about students who tear the test up, who throw the paper in the air, who say, I can't do it, fall on the floor crying. These are the children with disabilities. Normal children in many cases have thrown up, gotten sick. I mean, I think in this country we're in a moment of a kind of national insanity where the numbers have become more important than the children.
Hva fikk våre folkevalgte vite om de utenlandske erfaringene før Norge innførte nasjonale prøver? Det er jeg på vei til Stortinget for å ta rede på.
Over about a 5-year period, as the evidence began to accumulate, I realized that I had been wrong. And I wrote a book that came out in 2010 where I said I was on the wrong side of the fence.
Diane Ravitch skiftet syn omtrent samtidig som vi innførte nasjonale prøver her i Norge. Og i boka si tar Ravitch et kraftig oppgjør med en politikk hun selv har gått i spissen for.
The test-taking culture has been has had very negative impact on the morale of teachers. Over the past year and a half or so, I've spoken probably to well over 100,000 teachers. And the most common reaction that I get is the description of the deep demoralization of teachers by this emphasis on the test as the measure of all things, because it means that they will not be allowed to make decisions about their professional practice. They must focus on this external exam. Whether they like the exam or not, it will determine their classroom practice. It will limit their professional autonomy. It will in fact de-skill them.
Nå bruker Diane Ravitch sitt lands erfaringer til å advare andre mot testbasert kvalitetsutvikling i skolen. Og det samme gjør Cambridge-professor Robin Alexander.
It's for Norwegians to decide how they respond. But what I would say is do not copy in the naive way that some policymakers are doing in some other countries, the English or the American experience. Be much more cautious in the way that you use the data from PISA. And at the same time, ask yourself what really matters in education in Norway. Is it measured test results in literacy and numeracy? Is it the quality of education overall?
Så hva fikk egentlig Stortinget vite om utenlandske erfaringer før vi innførte nasjonale prøver i Norge? Jeg ba utdanningspolitiker Aksel Hagen om å undersøke saken.
Nei, jeg ble jo nysgjerrig da. Da du spurte meg, så gikk vi tilbake til stortingsmeldingen og NOU-en og fant jo ingenting.
Ingenting om utenlandske erfaringer?
Det stemmer.
Hva tenker du om det?
Nei, altså vi ønsker at politikk skal være kunnskapsbasert, og kanskje særlig kunnskapspolitikk burde være kunnskapsbasert. Og da er det jo sterkt beklagelig at en ikke her har hentet inn utenlandske erfaringer, eller hentet inn liksom status på forskningsfeltet.
Mens visse norske politikere vil ha mer og mer testing i grunnskolen, kan trenden være i ferd med å snu i landene som allerede har innført systemet som nå importeres til Norge.
In the fall of 2011, a large group of principals in New York State banded together and signed a protest letter. 75% of the principals, which was about 700 principals, signed this letter, and they said you are by using test scores to evaluate our staff, You're demoralizing our staff. We are a community. We're a team. We need to work together. And we don't like this approach, and we're going to fight it. So this is, I think, is probably the first principles revolt in the history of the world.